The vampire king saw the broken girl who still smiled, and swore, "Touch her and you die." The night was a cloak of shadows over the kingdom, the kind that swallowed sound and light alike. In the distance, the castle of Valerian, the vampire king, rose like a jagged crown, its spires piercing the sky. Windows glimmered faintly, reflecting pale moonlight that bathed the courtyard in silver. Within its walls, whispers of fear and reverence twisted together, for Valerian was a ruler of unmatched power, merciless, cunning, and feared by all who knew his name. Yet for all his strength and command, the king had a loneliness no throne could fill. The centuries had hardened his heart, forged him into a being of shadow and control. He walked among his court with the grace of a predator, yet always a quiet void lingered behind his cold, amber eyes. Brass far from the castle, in the deep forest that stretched like a black ocean. Leora walked alone. Her steps were careful, light upon the leaf-strewn path, her cloak pulled close around her shoulders. But she was small in stature, but her presence carried a force all her own. Scars marked her arms and face, remnants of betrayal she would never speak aloud, yet despite her pain, her lips curved into a gentle smile, a fragile, defiant flame in the darkness. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath as she moved. Creatures of the night stayed hidden, sensing the unusual energy that clung to her. Leora's smile was not naive. It was a shield, a declaration. She had been broken, but not defeated. The forest ended abruptly at the edge of a dark cliff, where the air was thick with mist and the scent of the sea below. Pest. And there, under the light of a slivered moon, Valerian appeared. His sudden presence was silent yet commanding, as if the shadows themselves had shaped into a man. His coat, black as midnight, trailed behind him, and the faint glimmer of his eyes cut through the mist like twin amber flames. Leora froze, sensing him before she saw him fully. She did not tremble, though her heart thudded like a drum. "Who walks near my lands at this hour?" Valerian's voice was smooth, deep, and dangerous, carrying over the wind as if it belonged to the night itself. Breath. "I walk where I must," she replied calmly, lifting her chin. "And I leave when I choose." He studied her, silent for a long moment. There was something in her, a spark that refused to be extinguished, a light in the darkness that drew him closer, though he did not move at once. "You are bold!" he said finally, stepping out from the shadows. Few dare smile in the presence of death. "I have learned that fear is a poor companion," Leora said softly. "Pain is what teaches." Death. Death can wait. Valerian's lips curved, almost imperceptibly, at her words. "Boldness, yes, but there was more."
She carried a warning, a secret wrapped in her very being, and he could feel it.
"You should not smile," he murmured, closing the distance between them. "It is base, dangerous." Leora did not flinch. Bangs. She raised her hand slightly, her fingers trembling only with controlled purpose. "Touch me, and you will regret it."
"I swear it." The word struck the king with more weight than any blade ever could. He froze, an unaccustomed flicker of caution passing through him.
"A warning?" he asked, almost incredulously. "Yes." "Touch her and you die," she said, each word precise, each syllable carrying a power that made even him pause. Her voice was soft, yet it resonated with authority. He stepped closer, curiosity and desire mingling with caution.
"And if I do?"
he asked.
"A dangerous edge creeping into his toe."
"You will find out," she said simply, her gaze unwavering. She did not move back, though her stance was firm. There was no fear in her eyes, only the quiet strength of someone who had survived far too much to bow to threats, even those draped in shadows.
Valerian extended a single hand, just enough to brush her fingers lightly.
The air seemed to shiver at the touch, the forest holding its breath. Pain and warmth collided within him, a strange surge that neither time nor immortality had taught him to resist. For the first time in centuries, he felt the weight of mortality brush against his soul.
You feel it, don't you? Leora asked, tilting her head.
Bah. Her voice was gentle now, almost curious. Valerian did not answer immediately. His amber eyes, luminous against the darkness, were fixed on hers, seeing not only her beauty, but the history written in the lines of her face, the scars she bore, and the life she had fought to survive. Her smile remained, quiet and unwavering, though he could sense the pain beneath it.
You are...
Unusual, he said finally, withdrawing his hand slowly. And dangerous. Perhaps more than you realize. I am neither afraid nor weak, she replied. I have survived things far worse than you can imagine. And if you value your life, you will keep your distance. Valerian's lips curved into a faint, dark smile.
I value many things, he said, but distance has never been my way. The tension between them pulsed like a living thing.
Night creatures stirred, sensing the energy that wrapped around them. But they dared not approach. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faintest echo of something old and ancient, as if the world itself waited to see what would happen next. You should leave, Leora said softly, yet her voice carried steel beneath its gentleness. The forest is not safe. And neither is this place if you insist on testing me. And yet Valerian's voice was low, a growl of curiosity and desire. You did not leave, Bay. And yet, she replied, I did not fear you. A silence followed, thick with unspoken understanding. Two beings, so different and yet inexplicably linked, stood under the moonlight. One immortal and feared by all. The other, mortal, or at least seemingly so, but touched with a power that made the very air around her hum. Valerian's eyes narrowed slightly, the shadows around him deepening.
There is a fire in you,
he said, almost in a whisper. A fire I have not felt in centuries, and I am...
intrigued. I am not for intrigue, Leora replied, her tone steady, though her heart beat faster than she cared to admit.
I am for survival, and for my own choices. You choose to walk alone in a world that would devour you, he said, yet you carry a smile like a shield. Tell me, why? Because, she said, looking away briefly at the silver-tipped trees, even broken things can hold light. Even when everything hurts, one can choose to shine, if only a little. For the first time, Valerian felt something stir within him that was not hunger, not domination, not desire in its simplest form. It was a curiosity, a fascination, a longing for something he had not felt since the beginning of his endless reign. He stepped closer again, careful not to touch, yet drawn as if by an invisible thread.
You are remarkable, he murmured.
And you are dangerous, she said in return, her smile unwavering. Do not mistake interest for weakness. Valerian chuckled softly, a low sound that blended with the rustling leaves.
I do not underestimate. Not easily.
But you are a riddle I wish to solve, Leora. Despair. Her eyes widened slightly, though the smile remained. Do not think you can solve me, she said. Breath. There are wounds you will never reach, pain you will never understand. And still, breath, you are free to try. Something unspoken passed between them, a spark of connection heavier than words, older than life, yet fragile as gossamer. For a moment the forest itself seemed to lean in, listening, holding its breath. Valerian's hand hovered in the air near hers once more. The brush of his fingers was enough to make both of them pause. Pain and warmth surged, a binding force neither could ignore.
You.
Feel it, Leora whispered, almost as if sharing a secret. Yes, he admitted, his voice low, laden with a mixture of fascination and unease. And I am changed by you. Bah. Leora's smile softened, but there was a shadow behind it, a warning unspoken. Do not mistake what you feel, she said. Power is not love. Curiosity is not trust. Bah. Touch me and you risk more than you imagine. Valerian's amber eyes searched hers, seeing the layers of her soul, the hidden strength, and the fragile beauty she protected with every breath. Perhaps that is exactly why I must, he said, his tone dark, yet strangely tender. And as the mist curled around them, as the wind whispered secrets of the night, two beings, one broken, one eternal, stood facing each other. A spark had been struck, delicate yet undeniable, dangerous yet necessary. The forest seemed to shiver at the energy between them, and the moon cast its pale light upon them like a witness to the beginning of something neither fully understood. For the first time, Valerian realized that she might be the only being in the world who could truly break him. And she smiled. The castle loomed like a dark monument against the night sky, its walls cold and unyielding, yet alive with whispers and shadows. Leora had never imagined stepping within its gates would feel like stepping into a living labyrinth of power and danger. Every corridor was lined with cold stone, tapestries that depicted battles long past, and the faintest flicker of candlelight that seemed to tremble in fear of the darkness itself. Valerian walked beside her, silent and imposing, his presence filling the vast hallways with an almost tangible weight. Even centuries of isolation had not dulled his commanding aura. He moved as if the castle itself obeyed him, shadows curling around his figure like loyal attendants. You should not have come here, he said finally, his voice low, carrying the same dangerous calm as always. Yet you did. Why? Leora kept her eyes forward, though her heart raced. Because I have no choice, she replied. There are things I must do, things I cannot leave behind. Bay, and if I run, it will only make me weaker. Valerian's amber eyes flickered, measuring her with a predator's precision. He noted the firmness in her step, the way her shoulders refused to curve beneath fear, the defiance hidden beneath her smile.
She was a puzzle, a flame that refused to be snuffed, and that made her both irresistible and dangerous.
Bear. You are bold, he murmured. Bold enough to survive in a place that could swallow you whole. And you, she said softly, glancing at him, are bold enough to walk in shadows that would devour others without thought.
Yet here you are, alive. Perhaps courage is not enough to measure us.
A shadow stirred. At the edge of the corridor, a servant or guard perhaps watching the unlikely pair. But Valerian's presence alone seemed to make all who lived in the castle bow in silence. The corridors held their breath, as if aware that something fragile and dangerous now walked among them.
Leora sensed the tension, yet she did not falter.
Bess. She knew she was being tested. Every step in the castle was a trial, every glance from Valerian a silent challenge. And she had learned long ago that survival required more than caution. It demanded strength of mind and will. They arrived at a chamber that overlooked the moonlit gardens. Valerian gestured for her to enter, though his expression remained unreadable. "You will stay here tonight," he said. "Bed. The corridors are not safe for one such as you. There are forces here that will not forgive weakness." "I am not weak," Leora replied calmly. "And yet," he said, "you are mortal, and mortality is fragile." The room was simple yet elegant, the furniture minimal, the air thick with quiet power. Leora closed the door behind her, listening to the faint click of the lock, knowing it was more than security. It was a barrier, a test, a cage, and perhaps a promise. Valerian did not leave. He lingered outside, a silent guardian of shadows, until she finally spoke.
"Do you trust me?" she asked, her voice small but steady.
Valerian did not answer immediately. He remained still, like a statue carved from night itself, until he finally said, "Trust is dangerous." "Then perhaps you will understand why I keep my smile," she replied. "I have learned to protect myself. I have learned to face danger without surrendering." He studied her again, as if trying to pierce through the layers of history, pain, and defiance that cloaked her. There was a fire within her, a light that seemed almost impossible in a world dominated by shadow and cruelty. And yet that light drew him closer, even as his instincts whispered caution. The night stretched, heavy with unspoken tension. Leora felt the walls of the castle pressing in, the silence around her both comforting and suffocating. She could hear the faintest footsteps in the hall, the rustle of servants attending unseen duties, the whisper of wind brushing against the cold stone. And always, at the edge of her awareness, there was Valerian, watching, calculating, yet strangely protective. The castle was alive with whispers, with glances that measured and judged.
Nobles and servants alike spoke in hushed tones of the girl who had dared to enter the vampire king's domain.
Some saw her as a threat, others as a curiosity, but all agreed on one thing. She was unlike anyone they had ever known. Valerian watched her in silence, noting the careful way she navigated the halls, the subtle strength in her gestures, the way she met challenges without flinching. He found himself, intrigued. And more than intrigued. For the first time in centuries, he felt a connection that was not based on power or fear. One evening, the castle fell into a rare stillness. Valerian found her in the moonlit gardens, standing among the stone statues that seemed almost alive in the faint glow. She looked up at him, her smile soft, yet tinged with something he could not name. "You are relentless," he said, stepping closer. "And I am compelled by it." "I am not here to compel you," she replied gently. "I am here to survive, to endure, to choose."
He reached out, careful, hesitant, yet drawn by a force he could not resist.
His hand hovered near hers, the space between them charged with unspoken understanding and quiet danger. "You are extraordinary," he said, almost in a whisper. And you are dangerous, she replied, meeting his gaze with unyielding strength. Do not mistake my presence for submission. Their hands brushed lightly, almost accidentally, yet the touch was electric. A surge of energy passed between them, a warning and a promise intertwined. Valerian felt it deep within him, a pulse of power, of fate, of something he could not control. You feel it, she whispered, her voice almost lost in the night. Yes, he admitted, his amber eyes glowing in the moonlight. And it unsettles me. Leora's smile softened, though shadows lingered behind her eyes. It is not meant to be gentle, Buzz. It is meant to teach. And that even the strongest hearts can break, she said softly, and that even the strongest hearts can break, she said softly, and that even the darkest kings can find themselves changed by light. He studied her, sensing the truth in her words and the depth of the courage she carried. The night seemed to hold its breath, the stars winking in silence as if bearing witness to the fragile bond forming between them. Breath. Days turned into weeks, and the tension between them deepened. Leora's presence disrupted the quiet order of the castle, challenging Valerian in ways he had not experienced in centuries. Their conversations were careful dances of words, each one layered with meaning, each glance a test of restraint and desire. One evening, a rival from a distant court arrived under the guise of diplomacy, but with intentions far darker. The halls were filled with tension as whispers of betrayal rippled through the castle. Valerian's gaze never left Leora, and she in turn felt the weight of his protection like a tangible force around her. During a formal gathering in the grand hall, a sudden surge of magic, dark and unpredictable, erupted. It was meant for her, she realized instantly, a spell of destruction and malice. Bang. Without thinking, she stepped forward, placing herself between the threat and the king. Valerian's eyes widened in shock, his instincts flaring. She had broken the unspoken rules. They had drawn boundaries, yet in that instant she risked everything to protect him. The magical force struck her first, and pain flashed across her form. Yet she did not fall. Psht! In that moment, Valerian acted. He reached for her, his own power flaring in response, shielding her from the worst of the attack. The air around them shimmered with energy, shadows twisting and bending at their feet. When the light faded, she stood, trembling slightly, yet her gaze remained steady. Valerian reached for her hand, his fingers brushing hers. The surge between them was stronger than ever, binding them in ways neither fully understood. You, he said, his voice low, almost reverent. You are impossible to ignore. This. And you, she replied, her smile faint but firm, are impossible to resist or to trust fully. The hall fell silent once more, the courtiers frozen in awe and fear at the scene that had unfolded. Whispers began to spread, but neither Valerian nor Leora cared. They had crossed a line, one that bound them together irrevocably. The night stretched on, filled with unspoken words, stolen glances, and the weight of an invisible bond. The danger had not passed, and the castle's walls seemed to close around them with the awareness of what had begun. Valerian studied her closely, the fire of curiosity and desire burning in his amber eyes. You risked your life for me, he said quietly. Do you know what that means?
I know it means I care, she replied softly, and I know it means I cannot let fear rule my actions.
Breath. Not even for you. The king's lips curved in a faint, dark smile. Then, perhaps, he said, we are both learning something new. And as the first light of dawn brushed the horizon, painting the castle walls in pale gold, two figures stood in the gardens, bound by unseen forces of fate, power, and fragile trust. The night had tested them, and in that test they had found something neither could deny. But the danger was not gone. Shadows lingered, rivals plotted, and the magic that had nearly destroyed them was only a hint of the challenges to come. Their bond had begun, fragile yet unbreakable, and the castle, ancient, dark, and alive, watched silently as the dance of power, desire, and survival continued. The castle was quieter now, yet beneath the calm currents of tension and whispered fears moved like restless spirits. Leora had been within its walls for weeks, enough time for some of the courtiers to grow curious, suspicious, or envious of her presence. But she no longer feared the castle itself. The stones, the corridors, the shadows. They had become a strange sort of companion, and her focus had shifted entirely to the man who commanded them, Valerian, the vampire king. He was no longer just a figure of fear and legend in her mind. He was a presence she could feel in the air, heavy, constant, yet strangely protective. And though she would never admit it aloud, she could not ignore the pull he had on her heart. There was something about him, something beyond power or fear, that called to her in ways she did not understand. For his part, Valerian found himself unsettled by the same force. Centuries of rule and solitude had taught him to expect obedience and fear. But Leora did not obey easily, and she did not fear him. Not truly. Her strength challenged him in ways he had never known, forcing him to confront parts of himself he had buried under layers of shadow and cruelty. She was a mirror to his soul, showing him the cracks he had long ignored. That evening, the king found her in the castle's library. The room smelled of old parchment and candle wax, shadows stretching long across the walls. Leora was standing near a window, gazing out at the misty forest beyond. Her expression was calm, almost serene, yet he sensed the quiet storm beneath her calm surface, the memories she carried, the pain she had learned to hide. "You are restless," he said, stepping into the room. His voice was low, carrying the authority of a ruler, yet threaded with a rare softness.
"I am thinking," she replied without turning. "The forest, the nights, the dangers that follow me, even here."
I cannot stop thinking.
You think too much, he said, a faint smile brushing his lips.
Hey, sometimes it is enough to survive the moment. The past, it cannot touch you if you do not let it.
Leora's gaze shifted to him, meeting his amber eyes with quiet intensity. The past is not so easily dismissed. It is part of who I am, part of what keeps me alive, and part of what haunts me. Valerian stepped closer, the shadows around him deepening like ink spreading across water. But perhaps it is time you let someone bear some of that weight, he said softly. She shook her head, a bittersweet smile forming. Desperation. You do not understand. My past. My pain. It is mine alone. To share it is to risk everything. Even with you, I cannot. Her voice faltered slightly, and for a moment the mask of defiance slipped, revealing the fragile truth beneath. Valerian reached out slowly, hesitating for a heartbeat, and rested a hand lightly on her shoulder. Beth. The touch was gentle, almost reverent. Leora stiffened for a moment, then relaxed slightly, feeling the unexpected warmth and safety radiating from him. Best. You do not have to face it alone, he whispered, almost to himself. Not anymore. Her eyes glimmered with unshed tears, though her lips remained curved in that resilient, faint smile. And what if I am too broken? What if my past is too dark to be redeemed? He took a step closer, shadows swirling at his feet. Then we will face the darkness together. Even kings are not immune to redemption, bears. And perhaps you are the one who will teach me that even in shadow there is light. The quiet was broken by a sudden chill. The flames in the room flickered as if warning of something unseen. Leora turned, her instincts sharpening. She could feel the energy before she saw it. A presence, ancient and cruel, approaching the castle. Valerian tensed, his hand tightening around the edge of the table. "They are here," he said, amber eyes narrowing. "The threat is closer than I anticipated. The threat is closer than I anticipated." "I can help," she said. "I can help," she said.
Boss, I can face it. Whatever it is, I will not stand aside.
You are reckless, Valerian said sharply, though there was an edge of admiration beneath the reprimand.
"But I cannot stop you. Not anymore." Together they moved toward the balcony overlooking the gardens. The mist had thickened, curling like living fingers through the trees. Shapes emerged from the shadows, figures cloaked in dark energy, their intentions unmistakable. Magic crackled through the air, the same dangerous force that had threatened Leora before. Valerian stepped in front of her, his presence a shield against the encroaching threat. But Leora did not flinch. She had survived horrors beyond imagination, and she would not cower now.
The figures attacked with speed and precision, but Valerian's power was unmatched.
Shadows swirled around him like a storm, striking and deflecting with precision. Leora moved with him, her own strength rising, instinct and courage guiding her actions. Together, they were a force both beautiful and terrifying, light and shadow intertwining in motion and magic. In the heat of battle, a surge of power struck unexpectedly, and Leora cried out as her curse flared. She had always sensed it simmering beneath the surface, a shadow of something ancient and dangerous. Now it awakened fully, a pulse of energy that threatened to overwhelm her. Valerian's eyes widened in alarm. He reached for her, his hand brushing hers. The surge passed between them, searing yet binding, and he realized the truth. Her warning, "Touch her and you die," was not metaphor. Her power was alive, reactive, and intertwined with her very being. Phew. "You are more than I imagined," he whispered, holding her steady as the pulse faded. "And yet you still stand." "I must," she said, breathless. "I cannot let it control me. I will not." "Not when you are here." The battle ended as quickly as it had begun, leaving the garden in eerie silence. Shadows lingered at the edges, watching, waiting, yet neither Leora nor Valerian faltered.
They had survived, but both knew that this was only the beginning.
"You should rest," Valerian said, his voice low and commanding yet gentle. "Your power, it is dangerous even to you." "I cannot rest," she replied softly. "Not while the world outside waits to harm those I care for, and not while you are near danger too."
He studied her for a long moment, amber eyes glowing with quiet intensity. "You are
"Extraordinary," he said finally. "I have ruled for centuries, yet I have never encountered anyone like you. Perhaps I was waiting for you." Her gaze softened, a mixture of gratitude and pain flickering across her features.
And yet, she said quietly, you do not understand everything I carry.
You will see the shadows inside me, and it may frighten you. I have walked through darkness longer than most can imagine, he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. Fear does not come easily to me, but perhaps you will teach me otherwise. For the first time, a silence between them was comfortable, not tense. The garden was filled with the scent of mist and night blooms, and the air shimmered with the unspoken bond growing between them. Leora leaned slightly into the protective presence of the king, and for a moment, centuries of solitude and fear seemed to fall away. Yet the shadows of the past were not easily dismissed. Leora's mind drifted to memories she had long tried to forget, betrayals that had carved scars into her very soul, loss that had taught her to smile through pain, and the curse that lingered, always waiting, always threatening. She had survived alone for so long that the thought of trusting anyone, even him, was both thrilling and terrifying.
You saved me, she said finally, voice barely above a whisper.
And you saved me, he replied, and her eyes softening. Perhaps we save each other in ways neither of us understands yet. The moment was fragile, delicate, yet imbued with a power neither had anticipated. The bond between them was no longer just curiosity or fascination. It was something deeper, something primal and eternal, woven from danger, trust, and the quiet understanding that their fates were intertwined. As dawn began to creep over the horizon, painting the castle walls in pale gold, Leora and Valerian stood together, shadows and light mingling around them. They had faced danger, magic, and the ghosts of their pasts, yet the true test was only beginning. The curse within Leora pulsed faintly, a reminder that the world was not done with them, and that every choice carried consequences far greater than either could yet imagine. Valerian reached for her hand once more, careful, hesitant, yet resolute. Leora met his gaze, her own hand rising to meet his. Their fingers brushed, and the pulse between them flared. Painful, binding, yet uniting. You are mine to protect, he whispered. And I am mine to survive, she replied, her smile soft but unwavering. Bess. And in that silent exchange the castle seemed to breathe around them, aware of the fragile, powerful bond that had formed. They were no longer merely a broken girl and a dark king. They were something more, something neither fully understood, yet both were bound to face what came next together. But the threat that had awakened her curse was not gone. It lingered beyond the walls, watching, waiting, patient.
And Leora knew that the trials ahead would test them both in ways neither could yet imagine.
The castle stood silent beneath the silver glow of the full moon, its towers casting long shadows over the land. The night was thick with anticipation, the air carrying whispers of ancient magic and old curses. Inside, Leora and Valerian prepared for the confrontation that had been looming for weeks. The test that would determine whether they would survive the darkness together or be consumed by it. Leora had grown stronger in the weeks since her arrival. Her power, once volatile and uncontrolled, now pulsed steadily within her. She could feel the rhythm of it in her veins, a dangerous yet beautiful force. And yet, despite her growing mastery, she was still vulnerable. The curse that clung to her, born of betrayal and ancient magic, remained a threat that could strike without warning. Valerian watched her from across the chamber, his amber eyes reflecting both concern and admiration. He had walked through centuries of shadow and solitude, yet nothing had prepared him for the fragile strength that she carried. Her smile, soft and persistent, was a light in his eternal night, a defiance that no darkness could extinguish. "You are ready," he said finally, his voice low and steady. "But this is more than strength. This is trust." And trust is dangerous. I trust in us, Leora replied, her gaze steady though her fingers tightened briefly around the hilt of a ceremonial dagger. Base, if we falter, the curse will consume me, and perhaps you too. But together, we can endure. Valerian's lips curved into a faint, dark smile. Then together we shall face it. The chamber doors opened with a sudden clang, and the air shimmered as the source of the curse revealed itself. A figure cloaked in shifting shadows, ancient and malevolent, emerged. Its eyes glowed with a cold, unnatural light, and its presence pressed down on the room like a storm about to break. "You dare bring her here!" the shadow hissed, voice echoing like dry leaves in a graveyard. "Do you not know the price of meddling with forces beyond your understanding?"
I know exactly what I am doing, Valerian said, stepping forward, shadows curling around his form like living armor.
"And I will not let you harm her." The shadow moved with impossible speed, attacking with a surge of dark energy aimed directly at Leora. She lifted her hands instinctively, summoning the power she had trained to control. Light and shadow collided in a dazzling display, the force of it shaking the chamber. Valerian moved to shield her, his strength and centuries of mastery weaving with her raw energy. Together they became a force neither fully understood, a bond of light and shadow, fear and courage, past and present intertwining in motion. The shadow hissed, recoiling from the unexpected unity of their power. "You are not meant to survive this," it said. "You are mortal and cursed. You cannot withstand me." Leora's smile, faint but unwavering, touched her lips. "I am stronger than my past," she said, voice steady. "And I am not alone." Valerian reached for her, their hands meeting, and the pulse of her curse surged between them. This time, though, it was not destructive. It was tempered by their connection, their trust, and the acceptance of their shared fate. The energy that had threatened them now became a weapon of their own, striking back at the shadow with a brilliance that lit the chamber. The shadow screamed, its form unraveling under the force of combined will and power. Valerian and Leora moved as one, their energy a dance of light and darkness, and finally, with a last surge of brilliance, the ancient threat dissipated, leaving only echoes in the stone walls. For a moment, silence fell. The castle seemed to exhale, as if releasing centuries of tension in a single breath. Leora leaned against Valerian, exhausted but unbroken. He held her steady, his hand firm yet gentle, and she rested her forehead against his chest. "Pit, you did it," he said quietly. "We did it."
Yes, she replied softly, but not alone.
Never alone. For the first time since their meeting, they allowed themselves to breathe, to feel the weight of the danger passing, the storm finally yielding to calm. And yet, even in the quiet, the lessons of their journey remained clear. Strength alone could not save them. Power alone could not protect them. It was trust, connection, and the courage to face the shadows together that had carried them through. Valerian gazed down at her, amber eyes softened by admiration and something deeper, something he had long denied himself. "You were broken," he said gently, "and yet you smiled. You carried pain that would have crushed others, and you chose light." "And you," Leora said, lifting her eyes to meet his, "chose to see it, to see me, even with all my scars and darkness, inspiration. That is what made this possible." The chamber doors opened, letting in the first pale rays of dawn. The light fell across the two of them, illuminating the truth they had discovered together. that even in shadow there could be warmth, even in pain there could be trust, and even in brokenness there could be redemption. Valerian reached for her hand once more, holding it with a firmness that spoke of centuries of command and a newfound vulnerability. "You have changed me," he said. "Perhaps you are the only one who ever could." Leora's smile softened into something rare and tender. "And you have taught me that even darkness can protect. Pet. That even kings can be human in ways they do not admit." They stepped into the sunlight together, the shadows of the castle retreating behind them. Outside, the gardens bloomed faintly in the morning light, and the wind carried the scent of possibility and renewal. The world was still dangerous, still filled with uncertainty and hidden threats, but for the first time they faced it not as predator and prey, or as ruler and ward, but as equals, bound by choice, respect, and an unbreakable connection. Valerian's hand found the small of her back, guiding her through the gardens. She did not resist. She leaned into the support, understanding finally that strength could be shared and that vulnerability did not mean weakness. They paused by the fountain, its water glimmering like silver in the early light. Leora rested her hand lightly against the stone, feeling the pulse of the world, the quiet heartbeat of life and magic that had always surrounded her yet now seemed intimately connected to both of them. "I never thought I could feel this," she admitted softly, almost to herself. "To trust, to hope, to survive without fear consuming me."
"You will," Valerian replied, amber eyes warm. "And I will be here, always."
We will face the shadows together, Leora. Whatever comes, we endure.
"Whatever falls, we rise." Her smile widened slightly, brighter now, freer. "Then perhaps we are no longer just broken. Perhaps we are something stronger." He reached for her face, his touch light, reverent, almost afraid of the fragility it held. "Stronger," he agreed. "Stronger than shadow, stronger than fear. Bear, stronger than even I dared hope." The sun climbed higher, painting the castle and gardens in gold, and the two of them stood together, silhouettes against the light. The world would continue to test them.
There were still threats beyond the horizon, rivals who coveted power and magic that could be both gift and curse.
But for this moment, at least, they had found what many never do: a bond of trust, a spark of light in endless darkness, and the quiet promise that together they could face whatever the future held.
Leora's curse had not destroyed her. It had transformed her.
And Valerian the Eternal King had not remained untouched. It had softened him, shown him that even immortals can be changed by love, courage, and the will to endure. They turned toward each other, hands entwined, shadows and light mingling around them. There was a final understanding in their eyes, a recognition of shared strength, mutual respect, and a love that did not need to be named to be real. The castle, ancient and alive, seemed to acknowledge the change as well. Its corridors, halls, and towers that had witnessed centuries of fear and power now held a new story. The story of a broken girl who still smiled and a vampire king who had learned to love, protect, and trust. And though the future remained uncertain, though darkness would never vanish entirely, Leora and Valerian knew one truth above all. Together they could endure. Together they could face shadow, pain, and danger, and emerge stronger, unbroken, and finally free. The wind whispered through the gardens, carrying the faintest echo of laughter, of triumph, and of a new beginning. And in that moment, the broken girl smiled fully, freely, and the vampire king, for the first time in centuries, felt the warmth of hope bloom within him. The curse had ended, the bond had been forged, and their story of shadow, strength, and enduring light was only beginning.